right, I'm Tom Ballard from Tonightly with Tom Ballard, and we have a little bonus for you here tonight on our show. We got to interview Greg Waters and Meredith Knight. Greg Waters, the writer of Riot, the dramatisation of the Mardi Gras parade, the first one in 1978, and Meredith Knight, who was actually there as an original 78er, and now we have bonus content for you here for the internet. So thank you for joining us, and thank you again for being on the show, Greg and Meredith. Much appreciated. We got to touch on it a little bit. I'm interested in your thoughts, Meredith. How have you seen this protest change over 40 years? You were there at the first one. Yeah. Now it's this massive event. Banks are getting involved. You know, thousands of people turn out. People travel from other countries to come to the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. What do you make of its evolution?
I think society has changed. And I think in the 70s, we were still very repressed as people, as community generally. And not just the LGBTI community, although we didn't even have that acronym then. It was the lesbian and gay community, basically. And I think a lot of people, that mobilised, that night in 1978, mobilised a movement where people said, no, we're not going to put up with this from the police and the politicians anymore. Prior to that, there'd been protests. In fact, in 1972, some gay and lesbians were arrested for protesting. But 1978 really mobilised the community. And then that continued because we had a couple of other marches that year where more people were arrested. And I think it's just evolved to the point where I think, you know, community leaders such as Justice Michael Kirby and people coming out like that and sports people, I think the community have said, well, hang on a minute, they're people that we respect and they're just like us. And I think the difference is when you actually get to know a gay or lesbian or transgender person and form those friendships, that's what brings about a change in people's minds, because we're no different really to anybody else. It's just that we choose to love somebody of the same sex.
We're more fun.
Well, sure, we are more fun.
We are more fun.
Although a lot of heterosexuals go in the parade today as well.
I know, it's disgusting. Greg, obviously so much has changed, as Meredith says there, but there is an element of, like, a lot of things stay the same. Now, you were putting together Riot during the plebiscite, right? There's huge discussion about same-sex marriage, and to queer people, that was really a discussion about our place in this society. Yeah. Did you see some mirrors there and some reflections? Really?
Yeah, and for cast and crew of Riot, you know, going through the plebiscite at the same time as we were shooting this was incredibly, you know, emotionally draining and challenging and very upsetting for some people, but ultimately exhilarating. We didn't know at that time. We didn't know whether Riot would go to air in the middle of, you know, a celebration of the passing of equality or sort of national self-examination about, you know, a public vote rejecting gay and lesbian equality.
There is so much to celebrate, as you mentioned, Meredith, but, I mean, we did a piece on it the show this week, right? Michael McCormack is elected Deputy Prime Minister of the country. In 1993, he wrote this editorial where he said really horrific things about queer people and about...
I believe he's taken those back.
He's apologised for them multiple times, and, you know, let's take that at face value, good luck to him. But a part of me just thinks if those comments were racist or about people of race, he would not be the Deputy Prime Minister right now. Am I wrong?
I don't know, there was pretty racist stuff going on around Mabo and Wick and all that sort of thing. I think the National Party was, you know, there were lots of bad statements around that time about Indigenous Australians. Yeah. I certainly don't think that would have stopped him becoming leader of the National Party, sadly.
Oh, great. So we're fucked on a range of areas.
Because the other thing is that's 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had similar views 25 years ago. So it has changed a lot. But I know with the postal survey, it was a roller coaster of emotion for a lot of us, because we thought, you know, when you heard the reports where it was going to be 70 or 75% in favour, but then you'd hear some really see some really homophobic stuff on television or from politicians or whatever, you'd think, no, it's actually not going to get through. It was such a roller coaster of emotion for a lot of people, and I think it was particularly difficult for young LGBTI people because they hadn't been through what those of us who are much older had been through. It was sort of the first time perhaps where they had actually seen it come out being discussed in such an open way, where everybody was having their two bobs worth about the issue.
Yeah.
And some of it was positive, but some of it was very homophobic.
Finally, again, to plug Riot, it's on ABC iView. Go watch it, please. And finally, I mean, you were there, Meredith, and then you put this sort of fictional representation of it. How accurate do you think Riot was, if you could be honest there, Meredith, about how much did it reflect the real thing?
I think it was pretty good. I think it was very well made.
Yeah.
And of course, there were some things where it perhaps wasn't 100% factual, like, for instance, the meeting that the community had with Neville Wran, where Wran was seen to be perhaps a lot more understanding and accepting than he actually was.
Yep.
But of course it was... I went to the screening of it at the Wayside Chapel on Sunday night, and then afterwards we went and lit 53 candles just near the El Alamein fountain for those who were arrested, and also for people like Margaret McCann and Lance Gowland and people like that, of members of our community who have since passed on.
Were people really living in that commune? I love that commune, that communist sort of queer commune where people were just having sex and reading books all day. That's what was going down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you get a bit of that action, Meredith?
Not really.
Oh, come on!
Crystal Street, the lesbian commune?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a lot of lesbian separatists in that at that time, because they weren't really relating to gay men, and I think it was really the AIDS that brought a lot of lesbians into solidarity with their gay brothers.
Right.
But I mean, I was never a lesbian separatist. I love gay men.
We love you too.
But the other thing was that about that, as the producer said on Sunday night, that it was a telemovie. It wasn't a documentary.
Sure.
And it's different.
What was the biggest licence that you took in putting that together, Greg?
Well, the Rand stuff was taking licence, and we moved time a lot. There were things that happened in people's relationships that were outside of the period of our telemovie, and we moved them in so that they could be part of the story.
Right. Well, it is definitely worth checking out. Go to ABC iView, please. And yes, if you're outside of Sydney, of course, you can check out SBS's coverage of the Mardi Gras this weekend on SBS On Demand and on TV on Sunday night. Thank you again so much. Thank you for everything that you did, Meredith. Thank you for putting together Riot and being here tonight on Tonightly. Greg and Meredith, everybody. Thanks, friends.